Hello and welcome back to the Cathedral of Ilium Lois. And this time, out of, coincidences more than anything, is the entire team. So it's a bit... Well, Pedro we already seen in the last part of the first game, but
I think I was in some of the first
Nope, you
game.
still were in Drova. Already asked, already answered. Um, but anyway, we're fortunately still there, and we still need to defeat the Burnt Ivory King, so we're gonna have to be here for a bit. So, at the very least, the presence of the others might help pass the time a bit.
So, Dark Souls 2. I'm well aware of the reputation this game has among the Dark
Well,
Souls
I'm gonna leave
community.
you last for that, Drova, since you're technically the most newcomer, but... and I will spare my final thoughts for, actually the credits of the game. So in the meantime, Pedro, do you want to tell us your experience with the game?
Okay, much like Teo, I'm also a Souls guy. I played all of From Software's games from Demon Souls up until... I haven't played the Armored Core 6, because I have yet to get around to maybe trying that, because I would love for some way to play the previous ones before I play 6.
Yeah, agreed.
But the point is, because I don't get me wrong, I have ways to get them thanks to emulation, but it shouldn't be like that.
It would be nice,
right?
but unfortunately,
Yeah.
From Software, major, weak point right now is not having that much of an interest in raising their own catalog. It's up to their Western the publishers, but they have contracts with the West. In this case, I guess Bandai Namco.
Yeah, I think it's Bandai Namco who publishes shit.
At this point, yes, but go on in the meantime.
Yeah, I don't like this one. I don't like this game at all because, first off, the lore is nowhere near as interesting. Let's get this out of the way right now. The lore in this game is nowhere near as interesting as in the other games. Again, Hidetaka Miyazaki's absence is very noticeable.
I think it's still like an executive producer, but in the same way Zack Snyder is for
Remember,
a
at the time
couple
that
of the
this game was
DC
being
movies.
made, he was working on Bloodborne.
Yeah.
So...
I think he was still supervising the project in some kind of way, so maybe it was even worse at some point. Who knows?
Who knows?
I think it was one of those bouts where he would occasionally drop in, but it's like...
Like, are you sure this is working? Then go on, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, well, instead of being like the main director in the chair, he was kind of like that guy who would come in every week.
No, I know that most of the team was comprised by people who work on From Software previous titles, like specifically like Shadow Tower, for example. But go on, Pedro.
There's also the problem that the game, but it's not just the lore. The gameplay itself is not particularly. It doesn't quite have the new. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain to someone who hasn't actually played these games, but I'll try. Let me put it this way. Souls combat is all about timing, parrying, dodging at the right moment, reading the opponent's movements, and so you can always know when to block, when to parry, when to dodge, all that good stuff, right? And a lot of times these games have a lot of problem with the frames. This gets technical, so bear with me. It's one of those things that really is hard to explain to people who haven't actually played it. Like, let's just say, if you played the first Dark Souls, and then you played this right after, you'll immediately notice the difference when you're trying to fight enemies, especially the boss battles.
The others have seen me, raise adaptability over the course of the game. So yeah.
Yeah, it's as a result, like, because the thing about Souls games is that the technical... Okay, let me put it this way. Technical perfection in the combat is imperative to these games working. Because the moment something involving the combat even remotely goes wrong, even a minor little thing, immediately things go awry, because these games are all about precision, perfect timing when you're fighting, right? Like one extra decimal of a second too late or too early can be your doom in the hardest fights in these games. So if the game, it's so weird. Like one thing I do recommend is watching Mahler's videos on this game, because he does a good job explaining the technicalities of the combat and what the problems are.
For reference, here in Dreams, because you haven't really seen it, one particular thing that tends to happen in a lot of boss fight that thankfully hasn't managed to help me, hasn't managed that much, in our run, but it is present and it's possible, is that sometimes the hitbox are a bit all over the place, and characters who are doing like riposte or a stinger attack, like forward, might have more momentum that the animation actually indicates.
So if I understand correctly, it sounds like the first Dark Souls cultivated a very strict and measured, but still pristine balance that needs to be very well maintained.
It's also, well, here's the thing, Jova, it's more up to lucky coincidences, because that the methodology that Miyazaki always did for most of his games, and it still happens even with Elden Ring, is that everything gets planned from the get-go. Then, at the last couple of months of development, everything gets scrambled and repurposed in a different order than planned. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes just for the lulz, and
Oh my god.
Well, again, your mileage may vary onto your lacking onto that, but the gameplay manages to, since it's developed from the get-go, it does manages to stay consistent for the most part. It depends. What depends is the potential unfairness of a moveset of a boss fight, because maybe it was planned for a later part of the game. Dark Souls 3 is an example of that with the Udex boss fight, which was clearly planned for late game, so a slightly nerfed version of that was going to put at the beginning of the at the beginning of the game. But as a result, it does feel still relatively hard for most of the players. You will be able to see eventually if we get there. But at the very least, despite everything, that one does remain relatively consistent, And unfortunately, this game, since it was trying to just emulate what the first one did, manages to get only a fraction of that. I will still take this over, again, I'll elaborate more during my final thoughts, but I will still technically take this over a couple of the bad clones like Mortal Shell. But there's a good reason, Jova, why this is technically the black sheep of the franchise for a good reason.
Yeah.
Again, the most common thing I've heard is like, well, whereas Dark Souls 1 cultivated a good balance of difficult but fair, Dark Souls 2 apparently has that only skin deep, and at its core is needlessly difficult to the point where it feels more cheap than actually fair.
Thankfully, during this run, things did not got completely out of hand, but, they can potentially, yes.
How did you prevent it from getting out of hand, or was it just the luck of the draw?
The mysterious and, an ancient art Jova of getting good.
Well done.
See, here's the thing. I've heard a lot of people, and Peter even told me for me, but that Elden Ring seems to have this, and apparently also Lies of P, that the moveset of the bosses is getting more and more elaborated to the point of potentially being, impossible to 100% dodge effectively, and it might be a problem. I really not having this thing so far, and I don't really proud myself to be a super pro gamer, so I don't really know what I mean. Sure, I still fail and everything, but I don't think there's too much of a difference compared to how the first Dark Souls was. I don't know. I mean, excluding this game, because like we just mentioned, it has a problem with hitboxes.
So in regards to this game, well, I've heard mostly about the gameplay criticisms people have had. It sounds like there's also a bit of a story.
Okay, here's the thing. I haven't explained yet the story to the others because I want to spare that for the credits, but they've been getting pieces of it. It's just that it's not particularly clear. The strong point of the first Dark Souls was to drop you into the environment. The story was not really important at the beginning, just ring 2 bells and you're good to go, basically. And then basically being told that you're the super, chosen one or something, or maybe not, and you have to ultimately put a choice at the end of the game. In this one, it's a bit different than that. It still has some of the beats, like, you being dropped into the environment and having to deal with the circumstances, but there are starking differences in how you progress. So, for example, all of the levels are not super connected, like in the first game, potentially, stuff like that. Like I said, it still makes the experience overall, it's still relatively fine compared to a lot of, failed clones like Mortal Shells, but you can definitely see the difference, and the frustration doesn't certainly help. again, I will just elaborate more maybe during the credits because we're still unfortunately far from town.
Oh, and here I thought this might be the final part of
No. We're
Like I said, sorry.
Like, first of all, we need to defeat this fucker, and as you can see, Jova, I'm having a bit of trouble, especially because I need to concentrate.
You seems to have taken out most of your party.
Allow me.
Less
What
able
your focus
shield.
is allow me. Like, see, like Teo said, the hitboxes. Again, it's a lot of technicality, Jova. Like, it's kind of hard to explain than just, I can't just throw it in under umbrella. Oh, it's cheap difficulty and that's it. It's more complicated than that. There's a lot of technical nuances about why this particular game is the black sheep, specifically the hitboxes, the hit frames. Because these games require super precise timing on the player's part. Therefore, it's imperative that the game doesn't have any issues with lag, frames, bad hitboxes. You know what I mean, right? Like,
oh yeah.
If you're going to demand super perfect precision from the player, then your game better be up to snuff in terms of coding.
It's also worth noting, Jova, about the releases. What I'm playing here is technically the game's final state, the Scholar Reversing Edition, which still does have the problems that I mentioned, but it does manage to have. You will not be able to see from the stream for to avoid potential blurriness. But it has 60 frames per second. It comes with all the deals.
Ladies and gentlemen, humanity has been restored.
I wish.
I always wanted to say that in one of these. Go on.
It has 60 frames per second, it integrates all the DLCs, it actually rebalances, items.
Yeah, that actually is a good question I have for you too.
Yeah.
Because I only played the PS3 version.
No, I only play, sorry, go on, sorry.
So my experience is based on the original PS3 version, so does the remaster fix things?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of the stupid hitboxes, are actually more properly fixed. They are still present, but not, to the point. Again, they genuinely tried their work to actually manage to get the game going. If you remember both the patch notes, the nerfing of some of the more powerful spells, like, I forgot the name, the Bolt of Lightning Miracle, those are still there, because at the beginning of the game, they were basically the-meta, as in, they were able to make you cheese through the game constantly. So I get the idea why they nerfed that, and especially considering I'm not don't do magical builds. I don't particularly care. So technically speaking, Jova, this is basically the best version of the game. It still has its problems, but it's actually more close to how the first game actually was.
I was gonna ask, is this like a Final Fantasy XIV case where the original state was like,
No, not that kind of buggy. The original state was a thing that it played was locked at 30 FPS due to the PS3 and Xbox 360 basically. It had all the major hitboxes that I mentioned, and also worth noting is that the lighting system was a bit more fucked, because a big promotional material was the usage of torches, and that I've been using throughout the run. The usage of torches, and the fact that a lot of areas would require them because they are too, dark in how they're presented. But the vanilla version of 2 really was not presenting them as such. You really did not need them. But thankfully this one manages to fix better the lighting engine in order to actually make you actually use the torches when you need them.
I think I can get it. It may not have been the worst, but it was definitely in a state where if you were used to the original Dark Souls, you were in for
You will note even more the difference, yes.
Look, Trevor, let me put it this way. Okay, it's kind of hard to find a good Sonic analogy for this. It's kind of like the same thing. It's kind of like, okay, let me put it this way. You know how you play Sonic 4 Episode 2? And to explain to a non-Sonic fan why there's still something not quite right with the physics, it's kind of like that, right? Like, Sonic fans like us, we know exactly why Sonic 4 Episode 2's physics are still technically lacking compared to the classics, right? Whereas non-Sonic fans who are not experienced in the games will not be able to wait, physics? Like rolling? What are you talking about?
What are those?
It's very nuanced details that, like technical details that only people who are super in the know like us would know.
Right. Yeah.
Because casual Sonic fans don't know the first thing about how rolling is supposed to work, but how going up a hill and how Sonic should move up a hill and blah blah blah. They just go because
Regardless, so yeah, I mean that's kind of the point I was getting at, though. Like, well, it was like to a point where I'm guessing the original state of Dark Souls 2 was definitely a step down from the original Dark Souls 1 in a way that really did hurt the experience for a lot. And this is essentially the game after Rehab.
We also have to thank basically Bandai Namco in order for the existence of DLCs and the Discover First in Edition, because essentially starting with the first Dark Souls, we had this program of DLC episodes and complete editions that actually had stuck since, because From Software was not really used to make those. So there is that.
This also had its impact on Dark Souls 3. Whereas Dark Souls 3 is a good game, don't get me wrong, but compared to what came before, it feels very safe in comparison. Like it feels just like another Dark Souls.
So I'm guessing Dark Souls 3 stepped things up a notch.
Considering it was still done by Hidetaka Miyazaki, it is still more enjoyable. It definitely has less frustrations, but in the process, fuck the crap. In the process, it basically removed a couple of things that in this game were considered basically quality of life improvement, like the gems, for example. I don't know. It's weird. It's a case of let's say 10 steps forward, 2 backward. It's still a positive net, but you wish it could have been better.
I get it.
Elden Ring personally is basically the ultimate refinement to me that I genuinely enjoy.
So it sounds like Dark Souls may have peaked with the first game.
Okay,
I will argue yes.
I'm hesitant to say this because I argue things in 3 tend to be still relatively also better than the first, and depend on the first also to be more impactful, like some plot elements and actual characters, and world stuff does show up in some capacity in 3 to be effective.
But what about being the full package as a whole?
In terms of a franchise?
I think you mean to tell Dark Souls 3 has some things that are better, yes, but like what's the one overall better game? Like when you put everything in the pot, like what's the one that has the best what's the one that's the most well-rounded?
Yeah, I guess one ideally, because mostly because of the length. One thing that 3 does is to in order to be big in scope and everything, makes sense having to have a lot of stuff in it. While the first, it's easy to pick up and play even with the frustration factors, and fuck, sorry. And it's easy to speed run, it is perfect for newcomers, stuff like that. But again, that's basically to answer a broad question. Right? It's basically the same thing as for me saying that the franchise as a whole is still good enough, despite this being the black sheep. It technically says something and nothing at the same time.
I can kind of get what you mean. Okay, I guess another better question I might have to ask was, did Dark Souls 3 feel like a direct response to the criticisms Dark Souls 2 was getting, or did it just feel like a proper return to form in the long run?
Both, because
both.
It didn't feel extremely prominent on one side or another, admittedly, because
like
Hidetaka Miyazaki is the kind of guy that doesn't really hold grudges in that kind of sense.
No, well, the thing is, with Dark Souls 3, Hidetaka Miyazaki returned to the helm for Dark Souls 3, and as a result, the game was much better than this one.
And it didn't even ignore the story or gameplay elements of this. Stuff from this does show up in 3 properly, and even without being, like a mockery or something. So at the very least, he also had a degree of respect.
Sure.
That's nice.
The only real there's nothing wrong with Dark Souls 3, mind you. It's just that the only real thing that you can point at it is that it feels very safe. It feels like more like another Dark Souls. It doesn't feel super creative in comparison to what came before. Whereas something like Bloodborne, on the other hand, is like still my favorite From Software game to this day.
I wonder if the reason 3 was safe wasn't just because 2 had the reception it did, but more so because, like, well, Dark Souls has a very, very, very special identity, whereas, say, stuff like Bloodborne or Elden Ring weren't, limited to keeping in with the identity of Dark Souls.
Keep in mind, Rosa, that Bloodborne was initially conceived as a direct sequel to Demon Souls. It's just that it was retooled at the last second by the thing that I mentioned, Umbasa.
Interesting.
But actually, while we're at it instead, since fuck! Let you two talk. Dweebs and Shirei, since we're technically near the end of the game, what did you think of the experience so far as people who are mostly detached from this?
It's a video game.
To be fair, yeah, we have been going this for 2 years technically, so it might be a bit hard to remember.
Yeah, okay, the story, it's a story like something you'd see in the typical medieval style lore. And that's about it. I've got really nothing much to add. It's just kind of there.
How do you feel it compares to the first one?
I don't
From what
even
you
remember much
remember.
about the first one, to be honest.
Damn it!
Again, that's the thing. Dark Souls to me comes off more for its difficulty than anything else.
Okay, focus. What about you,
Teo,
Shirei?
I mean,
Well, Teo, you and your friends are dead. Game over.
Yeah,
Shirei.
yeah. I was wondering, are you actually playing with other players too?
No, those are bots. I really do wish we got other humans, because we did actually found one the first time we got into the cathedral, but we hadn't seen at that
a
point
couple of parts ago, actually.
the other Ilium Lois Knights, unfortunately, and therefore, I wasn't, able to actually, recruit him directly in that. So we had to rely on bots, unfortunately. But go on, Shirei.
It's, I probably don't get a lot of the frustration that this is the worst one, so I'm not gonna disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
You seem to not be having as much trouble, though, but you've played it before, so that's probably...
Yeah. To be
Let me put it this way, Shirei. Because that analogy actually will work for you based on what you've told me. You told me that you cannot stand the way Sonic 4 controls, right?
Alright.
Are you, Shirei? Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's a bit delay on your end. Okay, to put it down in the simplest terms, Shirei. You don't like... I remember you telling me that you don't like the way Sonic 4 controls. Am I correct? Basically, it boils down to this. In the same way that you cannot stand playing Sonic 4 because as a Sonic fan you can tell there's something wrong under the hood, that's how I feel playing this game. You may not be able to see it, but I can see it when the moment I touch the controller, because there's just something that feels wrong when you actually play this thing compared to the first one. There you go. That's a good way you can understand.
Basically,
Otherwise, not enough mimics, I don't think.
Shirei, trust me, there have been more than I will tolerate.
Were mimics more of a thing in the first Dark Souls game?
Well, no, they've been okay, to be fair, they've been a bit more here.
No, the coin of fate preferred Dwibs over me.
Yeah, here's the thing. Shirei has a morbid obsession in me wanting to open treasures even when they're clearly mimics. But, how can I say no to that?
I mean, I can't see that they are.
Of course.
And I've been like, no, don't open them.
Okay, Dwibs, to be fair, you've been going through the entire opposite direction. Like, sometimes you need to have a bit of a spirit of adventurer.
So Dwibs and Shuri
Exactly, you can't be
beginning
afraid to
yang.
interact with everything just because it might kill you.
How many people have said I've got the spirit of an adventurer and ended up dead?
The average NPC in Sword Art Online.
I got it. The adventurers in Dr. Lautrec never seem to be in any major danger for the most part.
Well, the villain does die from
too boring for there to be any danger.
The villain does die from stupidity while doing
Yeah,
that.
that is true.
Yeah, right, he does die.
Because we don't even confront him directly.
No, that's the thing. Like the villain. Okay, let me put it this way. Even by the standards of the tone of the cartoony tone of the game, the villain in that game is so generic and stupid and completely disposable. Like he's so not interesting as a villain.
I was mostly talking just about the fact that he dies of stupidity by underestimating the whole adventure kind of thing.
Oh, sure, that is true. I was just building off on that.
The way he dies is essentially, well, I'll totally control this evil ancient entity. Oh no, I can't control it and now it's killing me! I don't think he even really gets to react though, since it takes him from behind.
Only Soul, yes. So go on, Pedro.
Well, actually, no. I will wait till Shira returns, so everybody can hear it.
But, yeah, no, like, well, again, I think you and Teo have explained it well that, again, the issues with Dark Souls 2 are definitely a lot more in the feel of the game. Something you definitely get from playing it, and not only just playing it, but playing it, like, back-to-back with the first Dark Souls game. Or at the very least being familiar enough with how Dark Souls 1 controls to see what's the issue with this one, and so on and so forth.
Again, like I said, the good comparison is Sonic 4 physics versus Sonic 3 and Knuckles physics. Like, fans like us will play both games back-to-back, and we can feel there's something wrong in Sonic 4. You know, whereas whereas the critics who gave episode 1 good reviews, those guys clearly didn't really get it.
Why were you trolling with that emote there to you?
To pass the time while waiting until the boss arrives.
Yeah, he has to wait for him to return.
The Charred Ivory King works these ways, Joe. As you can see, first of all, he's a siege-esque, where you have to fight the Charred Lloyd Knights. But afterward, you know, he even shows up. Again, the moveset-wise, they try to make it actually similar to King Alanta from the end of Demon Souls, which is a cute touch, admittedly.
When it comes to Dark Souls media, I'm most familiar with the sword-bearing wolf and Artorias.
Okay, well, to be fair, in terms of figure, they're not too different. Artorias has a wolf theme motif to him, and even had a pet wolf companion. While Blythe is someone from Elden Ring, which we haven't obviously seen yet.
Oh wait, I thought the wolf was also in Dark Souls, because he guards the Weight Works.
That's Sif, instead you're talking of. When you mention wolf, I thought you were referring to Wolf Man, which Blade, qualifies as.
No. I'm thinking of Good Boy Sif.
I don't even remember if it was confirmed it's a male or female wolf.
Pretty sure it's a male.
Well, remember, Sif is a Norse name for a goddess of fertility. So, fuck, behind me. There you go. Unfortunately, the bots are not really that powerful, meaning that they're basically there for being meat shield. The trade-off would be that the boss will have less HP, but the problem is that I don't think I have enough confidence in actually having to be able to defeat it by myself. Fuck! And I have to get through the Ilium Knights, the Ilium Lois Knights beforehand anyway, so... And I'm dead again. Fuck.
If all else fails, try again. So, who would you say is the toughest boss in this game?
Oh, I think this one, admittedly. Well, okay, no. Let me think about it. A lot of people actually had a problem with the Fuel Knight, one that we fought in one of the previous parts before this one. But honestly, I did not particularly found him as difficult as others did. It still, was DLC tier level of, but not as, bad as other stuff that we did. We did have a bit of a trouble, okay, no, not necessarily boss-wise, but on the whole, we did have a bit of problem with one of the dungeon, the Iron Keep, which definitely was a bit harder than I remember, because the first run that I did had for the game was not as too much of a problem compared to this one. I don't know what happened, but
another issue that can arise from these games is when the developers get a bit too mean. Like there's one particular boss in Elden Ring that I hate, Malenia, Blade of Mikola.
Mikola.
Mikola, is it Mikola that you say?
Yes.
the point is, I cannot stand that boss because there's one particular attack that's basically an insta-kill move. You know?
Oh, you mean the waterfall dancer?
Yeah, basically. I'm not particularly like, and even in the good ones, like regardless of what Souls-like game it is, like I'm not really big on insta-kill moves on part of the bosses.
Well, to be fair, that one can still be dodged, and as the guy let me solo her proved, it is perfectly possible.
I get that. It's just that I still think that when a moves that hurt me, even like that kill me, even if I have full health on just one hit, I'm not really good on that personally. I don't particularly. I get that, you know, difficulty and shit. It's to raise the stakes and shit like that. But at the same time, there has to be a limit.
Here we go. Wow, these are done. Also, it's funny we mentioned the speed of adventure, but by the time we're recording this, if I recall correctly, Studio Trigger should have released already the at least the first episode of the Delicious in Dungeon anime they're working on. I forgot that Lucatiel could use miracles overall. Essentially, Joe, as you can see, the gimmick of this fight is that the Ilium Lois Knights that you actually have on your own will actually sacrifice themselves in order to actually seal the portals from which the bad Charred Ivory Knights actually come from.
Narrative and gameplay. That's
Again,
nice.
this is one of the more... This is the boss fight with more set pieces to it, and this is something that Dark Souls 3 will actually carry on. You know, the idea
How
of
about there's all these set pieces and
multi-stages.
then the boss... How about there's all these set pieces and then the boss just enters by literally running at you like Leroy Jenkins out of there.
From this portal. The lore is that, as I mentioned in the previous part, but for the sake of repeating, the lore is that this is the place of the old chaos, where in the first game the Witch of Isolate actually tried to recreate the first flame, but unfortunately things went very, very wrong, and both her, the entire kingdom that she was having, and her sister, her daughters, got turned into hideous monsters as a result.
It seems like almost everything goes wrong in this universe.
That's the general thought process, Jova. There are no happy endings, ever.
Nope.
Maybe there's a bittersweet kind of deal at some point, but nothing that you consider your standard good ending. And it's kind of a point. The entire point of the franchise was to take the traditional fantasy tropes and trying to push them to a more logical extreme. Not to the point of stuff like Drakengard, but still a bit more than you would think instead of the Tales of franchise. Tales of tries to do something similar by having cliches and deconstructing them, but still having a more optimistic message by the end. A case of bad things happen, but you can actually overcome and go better than that. This is more of a case of the inevitability of the future, decadence, and cherish the time that you have, because grappling onto things cannot actually lead to good results, basically.
But alright. Yeah, no, that's exactly it though. Like, especially Blood, like in terms of overall lore and storytelling, like the best ones for this from these is still to me Bloodborne.
I still have to
Like,
technically play it for myself. I wonder. I'm actually curious to see how I might enjoy still the limited selection of weapons and the fact that you have to rely mostly on dodging. But curious enough. Same kind of thing goes for Sekiro, technically, even if it plays more like the old Tenchu games did.
My overall take with Bloodborne has been blood's corrupting people and things, but you use it as mechanics as well, so go deal with that.
Let me put it this way, Jova. The city in which Bloodborne takes place has reached a point where blood is considered appetizing and inebriating more than alcohol, and people regularly use it to intoxicate themselves. So as you can
so they become a
imagine,
city of vampires.
well, some they just say that they just say that the blood has interesting side effects.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of the transformations. They
And again, some of
are,
boss fight like Vicar Emilia.
pretty much, yeah. It seems that can turn even the most innocent of souls into the most demonic
It's
of
an
foes.
what was the quote from Father Gascon? It's enough to make a man like bleed or something. I forgot.
Okay, so now, so what I was trying to say earlier though is that now here's the thing. I've already explained to you how the inner workings of the combat can screw you over.
Hold on, I'm actually closer.
Oh,
Yes! Fuck you!
got him!
Laval got him.
I like the void sword that they have here.
Very good, Theo. Now do it again, but without any damage.
I mean, it's possible. I'm just going. No, I'm not one of those
No
people.
hit right now.
I'm not one of those people that says you didn't beat the game because you didn't summon. Before continuing, let me do something quickly and read the description of the soul of our
Yeah, go
prize.
ahead.
If I managed to find it, there you go. The Ivory King. Soul of the Ivory King of William Lois. The proud Ivory King was ever merciful and devoted himself to the protection of his great land, until he was devoured by the flames of chaos. This wondrous soul of his great king can be used to acquire more souls or create something of great war, basically boss weapons if you want.
Interesting.
For continuing, let me just... In the meantime, continue. I'll just in the meantime get back to the bonfire because we talked to his wife.
yeah.
Go on.
But yeah, like I was saying, now, Shiro, with all that I've told you about the inner workings of this game feeling wrong, right? With that Sonic 4 analogy. Now, picture this, where I'm fighting a boss that takes a long time because the boss is tough as shit and has multiple phases, right? And then, at the last moment, you die because of a poor hitbox mistake or something along those lines. You know, like
That
if that's
happened.
the
I
recipe-
probably have to go and touch grass for 5 minutes because, yeah.
Not bad.
all right, let me-
It's basically Deji playing the Fang boss battle from the Superstars, basically.
All right, let me talk.
Yes,
Let
I
me,
have seen his
let me-
rage at that.
let me talk to the wife before. And
You've granted.
The king's wife, I
yes,
presume.
there is a big story going on about wives finding the kings and becoming their queens, but it will become more apparent at the very end of the game.
So let me guess, by beating them, we give them rest, essentially.
Essentially, yes. One gimmick that you can do is to go back, not for the king, but for the charred knights that you will be able to find, farming a particular type of souls and giving them to the queen. She will progressively shatter the ice that you see around on the staircase and eventually be able to pass along just fine, giving you her soul, meaning that you can use that to acquire either a spell or another weapon. That's the main gimmick with boss souls, though. Essentially, your reward is a soul that can be converted into, like, maybe the boss weapon, which grants their special techniques or elemental affinity, or type of weapon, as you so desire, or a powerful spell that can be used. If you want instead an armor set that resembles the boss, those tend to be unlocked on their own in other shops.
What do you tend to go for more, the weapons or the spells?
Weapons, I almost never do a magic build. Partially out of bias, partially because I just prefer heating things up, like, physically. Out of context, yes. Actually, I haven't checked who this woman is voiced by. I don't remember her name though, so I'll need to check in the meantime.
I was born of fear.
Is any particular build favored over the other in the overall meta?
Okay, in the first one there was clearly one. You might have heard via the memes of the giant dead. Essentially, heavy set of armor, an helmet in the shape of a mask of a bearded man that helps, becoming more agile, a grass crest shield which has the same effect basically, a claymore as your weapon which is powerful, which is powered up to be of lightning damage, And I think a couple of rings that actually boost up your health, stamina, and stamina gaining. The gist of it is that it makes you still relatively agile despite carrying heavy equipment, be able to hit like a truck, and of course, after doing so every time, taunt the poor bastard that you just felled with the taunt, well, what is it? which is basically, some actually consider it a form of griefing in PvP, but to be fair, the meta became very quickly attached to that, and the Giant Dad is still actually relatively beloved as a figure. Nothing particularly unique came out, in the following games, so the meta is actually more varied on that front. Let's see. Now let's have a look. 2 and 3. There you go. Alright, since we have still a bit more time, let's go try to defeat King Vendrick while we're at it. We might as well go up for the double regicide combo.
Alright then.
Yeah, let's go through the entrance might as well. Unfortunately, there aren't really major bonfires near him, so we'll have to rely on having a bit of trek, so to speak. Just here. Thankfully, I worked around. Yeah, that's another thing. I mentioned this to Drives and Shiri, but for the sake of repeating, one particular gimmick that this game has and the others do not is that if you kill enough the enemies in the area, they stop respawning, probably in an effort to try to prevent grinding. Technically, you can overcome that with an item, but it will make the enemies, as a result, still very tough. So it's not exactly a balanced kind of thing. And if you wish to, still farm enough enemies or the stuff that they drop, you have to rely on specific, either things that the game gives to you, or to just, try to soak it up and, try to sustain the damage, which a lot of people tend to do. It's just that, it could have been better, and this is one of the things that it's not retained in Dark Souls 3, and I can understand why. So, fuck, I forgot that these guys spawn. Well, whatever, we're
Do not
rigging it.
produce lights, so no torches.
Yes, that's actually the gimmick of the place, if you forgot. The guy with the kilt that we talked about way back when we were here, despises having to produce a source of light, and he will only talk to you if you do that. Otherwise, it will actually be very hostile towards you. Alright, let's try one more time.
Must have all the light everywhere else then, eh, mate?
It's a peculiar type of light.
In you go.
The gimmick with Vendrick, as I mentioned back when we tried to defeat him, is that his defense is jacked up unless you have the souls of the giants. There are 5 in total in the game. 3 you get to acquire them, if I recall correctly, via the giant streams. There you go. 1 by defeating a couple of giants in the Gulch, which I did off screen. And another one if you defeated the Ancient Dragon, which we're not gonna do because that would require a lot of time.
Really? How bad could it be?
Jova, I tried to touch the fluffy tail and it burns me to a crisp immediately. So, yeah.
Clearly a new approach.
Not your average dragon maid.
Well, you stabbed the tail. But...
Sure, I did the same thing with Priscilla in the first game and you told me it was fine.
Whatever.
Double standards.
This is your fault.
I didn't claim to not be a hypocrite. Leave me alone.
Fuck.
Dang.
Just
I
a
did not-
hypocrite, though.
I did not claim not to be a hypocrite.
I did
She
not hit
worked
her.
for-
That's not true.
Don't-
That's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not.
Droid,
Oh, hi,
did you
Vendrick.
did you guys go the murder hobo route in the first game?
Well, you can do that in all of the games. You can actually potentially kill all the major NPCs that you find. It will be a very stupid move, admittedly, but you can do that. One thing
I
that
tend to not go full murder hobo.
no genocide route, thankfully, Joe. But
I do a little bit of killing as a treat.
we do a little bit of trolling. Okay.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of killing as on treat Shiro 2024.
That's true.
Wow,
that
I'm
is
saying lots of awful things out of context in this part, huh?
that is true. This is the first
You
part
are.
of the new year.
Context is for the week.
Yes.
Although I
Like it's
might-
sure. It's
But-
like I told you in that episode of CTN that we commented it on, where I said, and I quote, hey kids, like when Sonic kissed Sally, hey kids, it's not cool to. I'm sorry, what's the quote, Jova? Hey, when someone touches you and waited you, like,
You don't like,
that's
that's
no
no
good. And you said, and you told me, no, she was clearly teasing, provoking him and shit, and that's when I told you, right, the internet doesn't give a rat's ass about
Actually,
nuance or
about
context. I mean,
actually about that, is it true that one of the things that happened in Sonic Chronicles is that Amy tries to guilt trip Sonic by faking to have an other boyfriend or something?
don't even get me
I'll
started.
take that as a yes.
I forget if it's ever confirmed that she's lying about Dexter, but it is heavily implied, yes.
It's heavily they don't outright confirm it, but that's how it comes across too.
And it from BioWare's writer around the time we were doing the first Mass Effect, so it's not even a case of they were shitty writers. What the fuck
Well, that's the thing
happened?
to remember. It's by BioWare, but it's by the newbies who, at the time, had little to no experience. You know,
I suppose it just feels
like
weird.
because the people, the Mass Effect people did not actually work on that game. It was basically a game that was thrown at the noobs.
Okay, to be fair though, I do feel like there should be like a boot camp even for the newbies that tell
Obviously.
them, hey, this is how we usually do things, get on our level with our pedigree. Like, I mean, the thing is, it was the name BioWare, so it was going to hold connotations with it. So we still expected better
Fuck.
for Sonic Chronicles.
This
Yeah,
is
it's one of
how
those
we
things where-
do it.
That is true, Joe. But at the same time, like putting the noobs in a boot camp involving one of the most popular franchises in gaming is probably not a good idea. You're putting a lot of pressure on the fucking noobs by doing that.
I
That's not a
definitely
good.
agree that. I definitely agree that they probably should have put a more experienced team on there. It's just that, even with them being noobs, I am baffled as to how Chronicles ended up the way it did. Like, there are some, like, there's rookie mistakes, and then there's weird stuff like everything can only be done with a touchscreen, no matter how cumbersome it is. Yes, even opening the menu can only be done with the touchscreen.
Yeah, it's God, what was that?
Anyway, to bring it back to this game,
go on.
is this a giant you're dealing with here?
No, this is King Vendrick. Lore-wise, this is one of the more important people around here. And to be fair, we were talking about how the story in comparison is not as done as well in the first game. I argue this is actually one of the higher points. Throughout the entire game, you're being told that this guy, King Vendrick, did magnificent things, and you'll never know where he went, because by the time you get to his castle, both he's technically absent. His queen tells you that he has actually gone away, and he's trying to find a way to repel the undead curse. And eventually, you find him here, a decrepit old man that sure still hits like a fucking truck, but it gives you that idea of decadence that I was mentioning, before, that even the great things, no matter how hard you try, can still result, into sadness and despair.
Makes me wonder,
There's
is
a-
he...
Yes, Drova?
Makes me wonder, is he undead or just really, 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 really old?
Both, and there's a term specifically for the series to indicate a state like this, hollow. When you're technically undead, you're technically still fine. There is a degree of consciousness that you have. However, the more you, well, not technically in-game, thankfully, but the more you die, and the more time passes, the more forgetful you become until you become, well, hollow, which is a more typical type of a zombie state that you can imagine,
Which I guess tethers to the humanity mechanics, and is how you've been
Yes.
restoring your humanity every now and then.
In the first game, you literally used humanity as an item, which is represented by a spirit. In this game, it's done by human effigy, intricate, vegetable shape used by vegetables, that resembles a human figurine. Similar to you. That's another thing that I did talk about it, but I think Pedro bears repeating because you might remember. The trailer, the footage that they used for the trailer, initial cutscene, make no sense in this game.
Yeah.
it basically showcased your character technically becoming undead, which had a family, like a wife and a daughter, I think, which then become melt down to represent the hollowness type of state, you know, and then the character travels around, you know, until they find a whirlpool, a location that it's nowhere near in this game, jumps in and find themselves in this world, Drangleic. If it's supposed to be a case of they travel far and wide to find, you know, a cure for the curse, it's not particularly stated, but we do know that stuff was rearranged even in this game. Very noticeably, I think that they talked about it, an enemy type, the mannequin, used to have a very cool looking mask, white, but because of apparently conflict with the designs in an anime that Bandai Namco was actually publishing games for, I don't know if it was Naruto or something else, but basically they had to change it to a very more dumb looking, you know, mask, and it's very disappointing.
So, okay, in regards to humanity, I know about the narrative thing, like, the more you die, the less you are yourself, but gameplay-wise, does, like, how much humanity you have, like, affect how well you move or something? Or
Your health,
like, well,
especially in this game, which is actually one of the point of contentions that I do agree, I'm glad it was gone by the time Dark Souls 3. In order to represent the hollowness, every time you die, a chip of your maximal health is actually reduced. You can prevent this by using human effigies. Unfortunately, human effigy, while technically farmable, they're not exactly distributed in huge quantities. Even at the end of a game, when you think, oh, it's the end of a game, they will give you like you know, a shop that actually sells you an infinite amount, maybe for a high cost, but still, you know, an infinite amount for the sake of, you know, preventing you to run out. No, they don't really do that. You can technically farm them from specific enemy types, but it's still kind of a bad, you know, way of implementation, and it's only a cumbersome frustration, technically. Thankfully, Dark Souls 3 circumvents this by going the opposite direction. You start with your normal health, technically, but by using a specific item, Embers, you actually give yourself a boost that allows you to actually, you know, reach higher amounts, and if you die, you lose that. And at the same time, the embers are not in infinite quantities, but so it's recommended to use them for bosses, but it's a better idea how to implement this, rather than, you know, just constantly chipping away part of your health all the time. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating, and while I get the thought process behind it, I'm glad it was gone, you know.
So, okay. So it's like the max health thing brought up in Dark Souls 2, because you mentioned that Dark Souls 2 is apparently the one that miffed around with things a little bit.
Yes,
in regards to the
like you said, I get the thought process overall via a combination of things. This was done by the team of people who were more accustomed to old FromSoft titles, which is reflected a bit, you know. And at the same time, they had a sequel to develop, so big shoes to fill, and you know, they had to make a product similar while updating potentially a couple of things, and you know, providing an interesting product. So I'm not willing to condemn the entire team immediately for, you know, for saying that, you know, because I understand that they were just given potentially a bad hand to begin with, you know.
Well, how did Dark Souls 1 handle the humanity thing?
Okay, you technically are all low to default. By using humanity, you add a counter to your maximum health, which is a little counter, 1, 2, 3, and everything. And depending on how much you have, you are allowed to actually summon other people in battle. You know, other phantoms. You get invaded by other players or other bots. Fuck!
Oof.
Rip.
And you can use that to actually power up the bonfires, your checkpoints, which do allow you, in that first game, allow you to get more Estus Flask, your health potion.
Also, you're not doing it properly. You're supposed to say, shit, fuck!
Oh, you trust me, you haven't seen how much of a gamer moment I had.
He's had a couple of moments.
Those stupid hedgehogs.
But yeah. Okay. So I think I get
What
the
a
idea.
shit! What a
Shitload of fuck.
shitload of fuck! Yeah, go
So
on.
I think I get the idea. I think I get the idea. Is like, well, in the original Dark Souls, it was like humanity was important, but it was more to like extra game elements. Whereas in Dark Souls 2, It's important to the
almost
stake that it
vital,
will-
yes.
Yeah, so, okay, in that regard, is save scumming a trick so that you don't waste all your...
Absolutely not. One thing that
vitality?
this franchise is very masterful in doing is auto-saving at every minimal step. If you fuck up, you cannot go back.
Oh, shoot. So what do you do when you're low? Do you just, like, go back and farm them to...
Ideally,
the
yes.
most you can? Okay.
There are enemies that you can do, but it's basically a more of a tedious process of not grinding for XP, but grinding for the specific item drop. So if you're already used to that kind of thing, like say you played Final Fantasy XII like me, it's not too much of a problem, but I can get why it can be frustrating.
I can definitely get especially why it would be even more of a pain in Dark Souls 2. Like, granted, if it were me, I'd probably still want to keep the humanity up just for the sake of it all around, but damn, it really sounds like you have no choice but to absolutely pay attention to that in 2. Again, unless you want to go for like an uber hard difficult
Again,
run.
Jova, the general thought process is, it's more frustrating. It's still technically doable, but it's more frustrating, and that's what ultimately bogs it down.
It really just sounded like Dark Souls 2 did want to press the envelope of what Dark Souls 1 did, but it didn't understand how to properly.
Like I said, I don't blame completely the team because, they were basically give a bad hand to begin with potentially. So again, I understand, and and I'm actually glad that no one was technically fired over this, and if anything, they actually became basically a supporting role for Elden Ring, meaning that it was a complete effort from the entire team. So that's actually
Oh
a
yeah,
nice
like,
spot.
I mean, well, I'm guessing that Dark Souls 2 still sold well.
Oh yeah,
so
the
that-
brand name alone, because at that point the first game was very famous, so of course people actually went in flock and actually bought this. And Bandai Namco basically has found a new a golden goose, which is worth noting. The partnership technically started by Demon Souls, because Demon Souls, very famously, was almost not even localized, because Sony, the game was done as an exclusive for the PS3, but the then major responsible for the Sony brand, Shuei Yoshida, was not particularly impressed by what he saw and believed it was going to be a failure. So as a result, in the US, the game was published by Atlus. Fitting, I suppose. It's even infamously there where they actually mentioned the whole campaign of "We get off from your tears." And in Europe, it was actually published by the Bandai Namco. The game is still technically a Sony IP, hence why when the remake came out, it was published by Sony everywhere. But that started basically probably someone in Bandai Namco was impressed with the project, and thus went to, Hidetaka Miyazaki was like, well, you can give it another try and we'll actually, give you a helping hand this time around, make it multi-plat and we're good to go. And you have to remember, the first Dark Souls was actually at least partially pivotal in reigniting the idea of big PC ports of game becoming a new staple. Sure, it was very rough at launch. It required several community patches, including from our good old friend Durante. But it's an understatement to say how much important it was, into reigniting people going to Steam to play a game like this, and how it basically created a snowball effect of having devs, including Japanese ones, developing PC ports for their game other than the console versions. So again, the franchise is responsible for a lot of things. So frustrating. Oh, you're also hearing the soundtrack in this, which is done by God, I forgot the name. The name escapes me right now, but basically Motoi Sakuraba. There you go. Motoi Sakuraba, which at the time, not so much these days, but at the time it was very workaholic. There wasn't a single year that was going by, where he wasn't composing something. And he did a lot of RPGs. He composes for Star Ocean. He composes for Tales of. He composed also for this series.
Star Ocean series.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Star Ocean, the game Resonance of Fate that Tri-Ace made. He's very good at doing Golden Sun potentially, which meant even using GBA chiptune. So
Didn't he compose a track for Smash Brothers Ultimate?
Well,
Yes.
that's well. To be fair, Jova, that's a case of having guest composers doing their own thing. But yes, he did actually remix a couple of his stuff for Smash Ultimate, particularly the stuff that he did for Baten Kaitos and Golden Sun. Again, RPGs.
They also had it where some composers composed against their type.
Yes, like I said,
those are usually-
infamously Keiichi Okabe remixing Super Mario Bros. 2 main theme. Which, like I said, I'm still convinced it's just for the shitpost purposes, because that theme has been used for green text, recaps on the internet. And Keiichi Okabe working with Taro, I'm genuinely convinced a bit of the trolling has rubbed onto him.
Especially since they make it sound incredibly happy-go-lucky, which is in contrast with what he usually does.
Well, not necessarily. Keiichi Okabe's scores are always, sure, there's the tinge of sadness, but they always try to have this kind of epic quality to them, a mysticality. That's also where the fictional languages used come from. It's the idea to convey this mysterious world where you not entirely sure what awaits you in there, and the fictional language serves to alienate you technically and give you an identity to the product as a result. But keep in mind, he's also more used to compose also for stuff like Tekken, and that's technically more straightforward, more rock-esque, You can ask Deji more for the details.
Okay.
Right, come on. Yeah, as you can see, even with the Souls of the Giants that we have, Vendrick is still spongy as hell. It's not a problem with the rest of the game. Thankfully, a lot of the bosses tend to be, fair enough with if I try to face them alone. But it's one of the case. It's also completely optional. Technically, we're defeating him for the purpose of the story. It's important also for the sake of the final boss. But it's technically an optional. You can even get an achievement if you do that. Which also might as well let me use this to talk. The trophy list. Because of the difficulty, Jova, as you can imagine, the trophy list is very hard. I did manage to get the platinum in the first game. That wasn't super easy. It requires you to do a couple of runs because New Game Plus is a thing in this. But it is doable. This one, not so much. It requires you to go out your way to do a couple of optional stuff that is really, really pleasant to do, like the Dark Lurker. Again, I'm not showing this to the others because that one is generally one of the lower aspects of the game to me. It requires you to do a lot of tracking, being super prepared, and consume a lot of human effigies. It's not just a very pleasant thing to do.
Are there any that are RNG based?
No, like I said, the only RNG things is the unintentional effect of the hitboxes. But if it wasn't present, everything else in the game, is just properly, structured the way it would be. The entire No. The entire thing about the game is that, it tries to create this sense of super difficulty, but something that you can overcome. Again, the philosophy of getting good has been unfortunately distorted in the way of trying to mock people that want to play on easy mode or stuff like that. But I do believe that its original meaning has a purpose. The idea of that anyone can overcome a challenge by dedicating themselves hard enough, and even if they don't do it, it's perfectly fine. But at least you tried. There's a purpose of reaching a goal and feeling the empowerment that it gives to you. It's maybe a bit hard to describe, but it's a sensation that you feel it. Getting basically to the top and seeing what you did and having a bit of a sense of pride to that. It's normally a sentiment that I don't like because it tends to cloud judgment from people, but I get the feeling of that.
I do get where the statement originated
it's
from.
a problem of the fact that it's used for a contest and to say that people are not capable of playing video games. Like the thing that I mentioned before about, you'd use summons to beat this, so then you did not beat the game. That's stupid as a statement because it's an actual game mechanic put there. If they really wanted you to not do it, they wouldn't have done it.
If I may, I feel like that mentality was always there. It's just that Dark Souls gave it more of a voice, unfortunately. Not intentionally, but
it's a thing that it's bound to happen when you reach a fan base this large, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Dark Souls is essentially a game that is famous for its difficulty.
There we go. Fuck you, Vendrick. Double regicide. Oh my god.
Well done. Will you be taking out Free Kings today, sir?
Well, hold on. First of all, I don't think I have his soul. Let me check. Old Iron King.
Didn't you say it was down to the marketing of the first game in the US that gave it that kind of reputation? Not so much the Japanese.
Okay, it wasn't on the level of... It wasn't on Mighty Number 9 level of anime fan or Prawn Night, you know. But it might have been, you know, partially responsible. Alright, before concluding the part, let me examine the corpse. Because one gimmick that... was introducing this drove is that a late game item allows you to talk with some particular dead, interacting with their memories, and the thing added in the Scarlet Pearl scene is you being able to talk with King Vendrick while he was still alive. So let's do that again after we vanquished him.
So a sort of
And we also got
time
all the
travel.
crowns, if I recall correctly.
What do you see in the flames? Find the
One cannot reside within memory for long.
The crowns hold the strength of lords.
I see dead people.
Literally. I mean, it's a thing that happens in all of the games.
Fire, that's what I see.
As befits you.
Dwibs, didn't Jingle Jangle A Christmas Journey teach you well enough that you need to look past that to see what's truly in the fire?
Okay, we're
Yeah,
nothing to see
yeah,
here.
heat.
Okay, I think I did not get the old Ivory King crown immediately. I will try to see what I have to do in between parts and will be able to report in the next. But essentially, after you collect all the 3 crowns and you speak with the corpse of King Vendrick, you know, you will be able. It will give you actually a special item attached to that. But since I think enough time has passed, let's use this to return to the bonfire. And to conclude things out, I hope you enjoyed this, and tune in for the next part where we collect our prize from King Vendrick, and then, yes, we move on to the final boss, actually. We're actually at the home stretch, so see you for that.
Fun stuff.
See ya.